What is up, guys? Dzeeff here, and yesterday was the first day that Burst of Destiny was legal in the TCG, and a nearby locals ran a tournament called Back to Duel. Now, I really hadn't heard of that type of event, but apparently it's for official tournament stores. They can run these events where they give away a mat to first and second place, and these little field centers to top 8. So it was a cool event. It was a little bit more competitive than my average locals. I think most people played good decks, and there were a lot of good players there. Now, I got second place at this tournament. Not that it was a huge tournament, but it was a lot of fun and it was fairly competitive. I only lost in the finals to my friend Ben. Other than that, though, I felt like this deck went very well, and I wanted to show you guys my profile in today's video. I took a Swordsoul Tenyi, and yes, this was the first day this deck was legal. This deck seems like really insane. I don't know if it's the best deck in the format, but all of the new cards in here, especially the two new synchro cards, the Swordsoul synchro cards, they seem like borderline broken. They just have so many different effects. They're so versatile, and in today's video I wanted to show you guys my build and kind of talk about my tournament experience with this deck. Now, obviously it was day one, so my build was not perfect, and also I did not play perfect, but I think I did pretty good. I think I have a fairly decent understanding of how this deck is supposed to win. Real quick though, there are two channels I wanted to shout out. First up, I wanted to shout out Pack. He posted like these deck guides for post Burst of Destiny format, and they were very helpful. It helped me decide what deck I wanted to try out in the first place, and he had like some combo tutorials and stuff like that. So those were all great videos. And then also DB Grinder posts high rated and tournament dueling book matches like multiple times a day, and those are super helpful. His commentary is great. He kind of talks about like where some players could have played a little bit better and stuff like that. Those were great because while it can be helpful to sit there and practice your first turn combos just on your own, it's also good to know how to navigate playing through interruptions and stuff like that. So I watched a lot of his Swordsoul matches that he commentated, and those are really great. Also, he had a tech card suggestion, and it's probably one of the most broken cards in this entire deck. Anyway, without further ado, let's talk about Swordsoul Tenyi. Now, I did not play the Fusion Destiny version. I think that version is good, and I'm probably going to try it out, but the Tenyi version just has so many ways to keep playing the game through interruptions. There was even a game 1, so before side decking, where my opponent was playing Phantom Knights, and he ended on Evil Swarm Nightmares, so that's 2 Book of Moons. He ended on 2 Fog Blades, so that's 2 on-field monster effect negations. He ended on Dragoon, and he had a Fog Blade in Graveyard to revive a Breaksword to pop a card with Rusty, and I still was able to not only break that entire board, but also set up a couple interruptions for his follow-up turn so that I could secure the win, and that was just incredible. So this deck is really good at going second, even though there aren't any hand traps in it. So of course, we have 3 copies of Swordsoul Mo Ye, is that how you pronounce it? I don't know how to pronounce any of these guys. 3 copies of the level 6. This is the Tenyi version, so we are playing at 3 copies of the Wind one. This card is great. It's really good for the follow-up because it requires the least amount of setup to make work. You don't have to have a card in hand to discard. You don't have to have a card in hand to reveal. So if you only have like 1 card, this is the one that you want it to be. Now, I know not everyone plays the Ecclesias in the Tenyi version because technically the special summon effect does conflict with the Tenyi special summon effects, but I think this card is still fine in the Tenyi version. It does boost your consistency. It's kind of like an extra copy of any of the Swordsoul cards, really. So I like this card a lot. Even if you do open the Tenyis with this card, you just do the Tenyi combo, and then you can normal summon this card, because while the Tenyi combo does restrict you to only special summoning worms for the rest of the turn, it does not restrict you on normal summons. So if you open the Tenyis plus this, you can do the Tenyi stuff, and then you can normal summon this afterwards just as a regular Lone Fire Blossom. Nothing too crazy here for the Tenyi engine. We did play 3 copies of Ashuna, 2 copies of Vishuddha, and 2 copies of Adhara. I think those are the right ratios here. I really wish you could play like a different Tenyi as well. I don't know, but all of the other ones aren't very impactful, but it would be kind of cool to have a little bit more of a toolbox here, but I think these are like the only ones that are really worth playing at this point. For the spell cards, we got a lot of strong ones here. 3 copies of Swordsoul Emergence, 1 copy of Sacred Summit, 3 copies of Mismatching Rarity Vessels, which is a very good card, but yeah, I'm planning on getting supers in the mail in a couple days. 3 copies of Pot of Desires, crazy good card in this deck. deck. You're not playing the Fusion Destiny stuff. The deck runs like no real garnets. All of the cards are live to draw. You don't really care about banishing anything either because you play so many 3-ofs. Desires is a very good card in this deck. It's very strong. 3 copies of Tactics. This card is insane. You can draw into extenders if you can't do your combo after you get hand trapped, or you could rip a card if you can still combo after getting hand trapped, or when going second, you can steal cards like Dragoon to just win the game right there. We also played 1 copy of Called by the Grave. This card is really crazy powerful, which I keep saying about a lot of cards, but this deck is very good in my opinion, so I guess that's why. 3 copies of Forbidden Chalice. This would be Droplet if I owned it, but I do not own Droplet because I definitely am not buying that card 3 weeks before it gets reprinted in Brothers of Legend, but Chalice was still fine. It's definitely not as good as Droplet, I want to make that clear, but I could see a world where I actually play Chalice and Droplet in the main deck. I think those types of cards are very good right now. I might even try to main deck Dark Ruler No More as well. We also played 1 copy of Gold Sark. I did not play Instant Fusion, but Gold Sark's pretty much the same thing. You just banish a trap and then summon a token and then continue on your play from there. That card was okay. It was never like super impactful, but it was alright, I guess. And then 3 copies of the Trap because we are playing Desires. This is probably like one of the reasons this deck is so broken. This deck just rips through like any slower mid-range deck because every single turn you can just search Blackout, pop 2 cards, you get the negate with the level 8 Synchro Monster. It's so crazy that like any regular combo and not even like the full combo gets you to a pop 2 effect and a monster negate. That is just so hard for a lot of the slower decks to deal with. For the extra deck here, we played 2 copies of the Grandmaster, 1 copy of Supreme Sovereign. These cards are crazy. They have way too many effects, especially this one can just like randomly like win games. It's so weird like how often you can trigger this card's ability. It's also just like a really big monster that's hard for your opponent to deal with because it can't be destroyed, which is really good. 2 copies of Baxia, 1 copy of Yazi, 1 copy of Chaofeng. So one of the biggest reasons to play the Tenyi version of the deck is because Chaofeng is an out to Nibiru, and not as important, but it's also good against Effect Veiler and stuff like that. So the combo that you do is that you can summon the Baxia, and then you use the Baxia to get rid of the Monk, and then you special back the level 1 tuner, make a Chaofeng, and that used a light Yang Zing monster, so your opponent is not allowed to use light effects, which is really strong. Then also this card like floats 2 into any tuner, which is just like even crazier than it needs to be. We played Draco Berserker, pretty good card. Crimson Blader didn't come up. No one else was playing Sword Souls at this event, which was to be expected because it was the first day that Burst of Destiny was legal, but I think Blader is still good just in case people do start playing Sword Souls around my locals. 1 copy of Dragite, pretty good card. 1 copy of Omega, and then I did have to borrow a Baron from my friend Ben. Mine is not coming in until Monday, and I didn't really plan on playing in a tournament, but when I learned about this tournament, I was like, oh, I kind of like to play in that, but I don't have my Baron yet, so my friend Ben let me borrow his. Thank you to Ben for letting me borrow that. That card definitely feels like a $100 card. It is very strong. The negation effect, the pop effect, the special summon effect, that is definitely a card that feels like it's worth its price tag. It is just so darn strong. 2 copies of Monk and 1 copy of Shaman to round out the extra deck there. So there's a lot of flex spots in here, a lot of like cool level 8 synchros you can play. I like the Tenyi version a lot because you can make those level 8 synchros pretty darn easy. Not that the other deck can't, but this one can really just like throw level 8 synchros at your opponent, and Baxia is crazy good when you are going second. For the side deck, we have 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird Nibiru, so these are all like really great against a lot of the big combo decks right now, against Drytron, against Dragon Link, stuff like that. Droll is just good in a lot of other matchups as well, so these cards I think are going to be very good in the upcoming format, especially because it seems like a lot of people are not playing Cross-Out Designator, so the Nibiru usually does actually resolve, which is pretty cool. So the one crazy tech that was from DB Grinder, and this card truly was like insane, we have Arch Nemesis Protoss. So this card can special summon itself by banishing 3 monsters from your field or graveyard that have different attributes, and then you can call an attribute and destroy all monsters on the field with that attribute. So you have to call an attribute that's already on the board, and then until the end of the next turn, neither player can special summon monsters with that attribute. So what you do is that you can make the level 8 synchro, and then this searches the Swordsoul Rhoda, and then the Swordsoul Rhoda, when you have a synchro, can actually grab any worm monster. So you grab this, you special summon it. It's real easy in the Tenyi version to get 3 attributes into the graveyard, and honestly, if you only have 2, you can banish this one as well. It's a light, so if you have like a Moye in the graveyard plus like one other random card plus this, you could summon this guy. But usually you have just 3 in the graveyard already. You don't need to worry about banishing this. And then you can either call dark or light. If you call dark, even though this card isn't destroyed, it still does the lockout effect, and if you call light, this will be destroyed, which will be a little bit disappointing, but it is what it is. So basically, if you play against a dark or light deck, you literally just have a free win card in your side deck. It is crazy. Like, I played against Phantom Knights, like I said, game 3, I just did that combo, I added this to my hand, and instantly won the game there, because while the deck does have a few extenders that are not dark monsters, all of the major extra deck monsters are dark. But what's really crazy is that when you go for this combo, usually you still have the trap card because the deck is so consistent. So you'll have like this, and you'll have this negating something, and you'll maybe even have the trap card to pop too. It's just crazy, and this card can stick around as well. It can't be destroyed by card effects. It has 3,000 defense, so even if you can't like OTK the opponent, you can lock them out again on the next turn. This combo is ridiculous. I think I might play more than one copy of this. It is very searchable, but I did get a little bit worried about playing Desires in the deck when I sided this in, because you really don't want to banish it. So the advantage to playing 3 copies of it would be that you could keep in the Desires, or you could play the Desires without worrying about banishing this card. But this truly was like probably the most insane card in the side deck. It definitely is a big deal for this deck. So if you play against a light or dark deck, you just have a free win in there, which is great. And the really good thing is that this card all works on your turn, so it's not like your opponent can draw like Droplet to deal with it, because by that point they are already locked out of the game, which is quite powerful. But yeah, that card is definitely a big reason to play this deck. It is so good in games 2 and 3, and this deck does have hard counters like Dimensional Barrier and like Token Collector and stuff like that, so it's not perfect, but that card definitely does encourage me to play this deck because it is so strong. Moving on, we have 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More. It's a great card right now. A lot of decks are setting up some pretty insane boards, so having this card in your side deck is probably a must in the upcoming format. And then we have 3 copies of Evenly Matched, plus 1 copy of Red Reboot for back row decks. Yeah, these cards are obviously very good. I think Evenly Matched is a lot better than like Lightning Storm right now because of that new like reveal in your hand card that protects your back row cards from being destroyed. And I think Red Reboot is just like an insane card against back row decks in general, but especially in this deck because you can just shuffle everything back with Baxia anyway, which is really funny. And then finally we have 1 copy of Order. Never drew it, but when you go first, theoretically you want to draw Order against a lot of decks. It is one of those cards that probably should be banned, but you're going to play it because it is legal. Anyway, that is all for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Swordsoul Tenyi is a very good deck. I'm going to try out the Fusion Destiny version probably later on this week in my other locals, but I think this was a very good first showing for the deck. I beat all of my opponents except my friend Ben in the finals, but man, this deck just keeps going. It has so many ways to just keep playing through interruptions. It is really, really strong, and I like it a lot, and I think it will be one of the top decks in the upcoming format. I'll see you later, though. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.